Welcome to the Scoop postgame show. We just wrapped up a huge 44-31 victory over the Penn State Nittany Lions out at State College. I have Nevada Buck with me. But first, as always, I have to say thank you for your support. We had the biggest game thread we've ever had today. Huge day on Buckeye Scoop. Appreciate you guys. But we're going to get right to it. Nevada, one of the biggest wins of the Ryan Day era. This was a massive win. Big opponent. Obviously, he's going to set down what's going to look like a 2 versus 3 showdown versus Michigan at the end of November. But what were your general thoughts and takeaways? The game got away. We had a 28-point fourth quarter. So the game got a little way away when it was a little tighter. But what were your general thoughts from the game as we were going through it all?
Well, we talked about this before the game. We talked about this at halftime of the game. I think that Penn State always plays this tough up there, and they find ways, and weird things happen. And I'll go to that drive, the drive that they had for the touchdown that put them ahead. They converted a 3rd and 16 on a pass interference call, and then they have a fumble near the end zone that they recover, and then they have a 4th down play where they miss the field goal, but then it gets called for the guy having his toe in the box, and then they go 4th down and Tommy has them in the backfield. It just, it was one of those days where everything went wrong, and the Buckeyes still found a way to win. And that's what good teams do. You always have games like this. If you go back through history of Ohio State football, doesn't matter how great the team's been. There's always tough games, and this was one of those games. And Ohio State managed to gut it up and find a way, got it done, and move on to the next game. Lots to talk about what we can improve. But hey, anytime we win up in Penn State, it's a good win. So I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, there's some games on the schedule where you just want to win by 1 point, move on, flush the bad plays down the toilet, celebrate some of the good stuff. But this is one of those games where I was just happy to get out there with a win. I've played there. It's a miserable place to play. Thankfully, Penn State is just decent. They're not great. I think if this was a great Penn State team, it would have been a little hairier, like the 17 team that had Saquon and NFL receivers. That was a different level than this team. But no, I was just pleased with how our guys stepped up. They played hard. JT, or I just call him JT, or Jalen Tuimoloau. That's the kid that I went and literally sat at the Columbus airport for, which is about as sad and pathetic of a thing as I've ever done in my life. But Ohio State asked us to do it. They asked me to do it. They said, hey, show up, make it look like TMZ, kind of make it look stupid. So I show up there, and then I get to see 12 coaches, half of them who aren't even there, guys like Kerry Combs in Hawaiian shirts. They have the flowers, the leis that they put over their necks, and I mean, it was a spectacle. And I remember that can only happen when there's one kid coming in for an official visit by himself in the middle of the week. So the whole staff's there. It was just unbelievable television. I streamed the whole thing live. We couldn't get anyone else from our staff, guys that actually covered recruiting, to go. So I said, screw it, I'm going to go do it. And that kid, you see why he got the attention he did. Fantastic day today. The right tackle was terrible. It was a backup, and JT took full advantage of it. And eventually you have to start cutting a guy when he bats down that many balls and he gets a pick and he deflects these balls. I'm like, at some point that's coaching when that keeps happening. But credit to the kid, man. He plucked that last ball in the air, ran it in the end zone, kind of put the dagger in their hearts. And it was he was fantastic, and you can see why he was the #1 player in the country. And you can see, after you saw how soft his hands are, you can see why I said he'd be a Pro Bowl level tight end in the NFL. I know people think I'm nuts for saying that, but I think he's just that good of an athlete, and his ball skills are just absolutely incredible. Nevada, what did you think of JT's performance? Was it the best performance you've ever seen by a defensive end at Ohio State?
No, by a defensive player, and not even at Ohio State. I think it was the best. It was the best defensive effort that I've ever seen in a college football game. I mean, look at the stats are simply astounding. I mean, I think he had multiple sacks, multiple interceptions, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, a touchdown. I mean, a batted ball. I mean, it was unbelievable what he did today in terms of just high impact plays across the board. And that's not hyperbole. Just look at the numbers. I mean, as great as Chase Young's performance was, I mean, this was different level. I've never seen anything like it. As you mentioned, we were talking about JT as a tight end, and people were kind of laughing at us for saying that. But you see it, the athleticism, you see the hands, You see how he can play. I mean, he's just an unbelievable athlete. And boy, what a difference maker he was today, and came up at the biggest possible time when an Ohio State team was just struggling all over the field, and he turned that game around. The score doesn't reflect how close that game was, and we were down with 8 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and then one comfortably going away, almost single-handedly because of JT Tuimoloau. So it's I'm couldn't be happier, and that was a big win.
Totally agree. And you guys in the comments, if you have questions for us, I see you guys. You guys are flooding our comments right now. Thank you guys for tuning in. But yeah, JT, final stat line. It's funny. You actually have to scroll down to the bottom to get the full thing. 6 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, pass defense, touchdown, and then scroll down. Interceptions, 2 interceptions, including the pick 6. I mean, if that happened in Madden, someone would smash not just the controller, but probably the entire console. If a DN did that, I've never seen anything like that. And some of it is you have to have the opportunity of guys throwing those low passes and the tackle's not cutting the guy, because generally if you're going to get the ball out that quick, the tackle needs to cut to get the guy's hands down. But they weren't doing it, and JT realized that, and he plucked a couple of them, and it was absolutely insane. The defense, I thought that they had their moments. They played well. They were opportunistic, and again, that's a hard place to play. I've played there multiple times. There was actually a point in the game. It's funny. I'm looking at the little win probability meter on ESPN. There was a point where they actually had them. They had Penn State when they were up 21-16 with a 68% chance to win. So this is right after they scored to take the lead. I believe it was. I'm looking. That's unbelievable. This is the fourth quarter. It was 21-16 in the fourth quarter. The little ESPN statometer has them at 68% chance, which shows you what that thing's worth. But the thing that killed Penn State is 4 turnovers. They actually outgained us on offense, 482 yardage wise. Some of those were at the end, which didn't really matter. But Penn State, give them credit. They're a good team. That is, and Urban Meyer said it in the Big Noon Kickoff, that is the hardest place to play in college football. I think, as you know, Nevada, if you do it at noon, it knocks it down by about 50%, if not more. But what were your thoughts on how the team handled the whiteout atmosphere? A little bit of a slow start, but what were your thoughts on the general slow start of the game?
Well, again, we didn't handle it well. We have to be honest. We had too many procedure penalties, too many delay of game penalties. We couldn't get the running game going, at all. I frankly, I didn't think Ryan Day called a very good game for about 3/4 of the game, and then he got magical. And I called before the game. I said, look, they practiced tempo all week. They need to run tempo against Penn State. And as soon as they started running tempo, they started putting those guys on roller skates, and it was over at that point. And I don't know why they didn't go to it earlier. I'm not quite sure. Some of the times I'm just mystified by what they're doing. I'm mystified by the times that they run into these mass fronts with running backs. It's a shame. It doesn't matter whether it was Mayan who was in there, or it was going to be Trey, or whether it was Jimmy Brown. If you're running into guys that are walking in, unblocked, hitting you in the backfield before you get a chance to get going, it's hard. And like I said, a tribute to some great individual efforts. CJ stepped up and made some really big plays. Marvin Harrison Jr. is pretty good too. I don't know if you might not have saw him during the game. And for all you fans out there, this is kind of that inside information that you get only at BuckeyeScoop.com. Marvin Harrison Jr. is very good. And,
the funny thing is about on Buckeye Scoop is you said that 2 years ago. You said this guy might be the best guy on the team. Then all of a sudden, magically, it comes to fruition. Coming into the Rose Bowl when we had our Showtime Nuggets, and you're talking about how good Marvin looked and how we couldn't check him, couldn't cover him. Then he goes out in the Rose Bowl, 3 touchdowns. So kind of the rest is history. It's easy to see when the lights are on and everybody can watch. It's more fun when we're the ones that get to deliver the nuggets. And Marvin Harrison was a staple last December with some of the nuggets that we had on the Showtime practices. I thought Cade Stover had a nice day, had a huge catch. Emeka kind of iced it at the end with that long one. But yeah, this was a pretty balanced effort. This was easily the best team we've seen all year. Sean Clifford, 32 for 47, 371, 3 touchdowns, but he had 3 picks, and that's a killer. It's really hard when you lose the turnover margin. They lost 4-0. Parker Washington, their star receiver, 11 for 179 and a touchdown. That's huge. But no, I thought that, Trey, on that long run where they did go tempo, he showed some of that burst. He averaged 4.9 a carry, but I mean, against Penn State, it's, yards are usually tough sledding. I don't think their front is as good as they've been. And I think, Matt Jones, I think my man is hurt. I think he's got to get iced up. I think you might have to evaluate Enoch or maybe someone else in that spot, just because he really was laboring out there. It was very noticeable. And as we get to Michigan, if there's ever time to get these guys healed up, it's these next few weeks, because it's Cupcake City until we see the Big Blue at the end of November. Nevada, it looks like we lost Mayan again. What were the biggest negatives that you had from the game? What are the things that concern you the most coming out of this win out at Penn State?
Well, just, you're still looking for that other cornerback to step up that can really play and kind of shut things down for you. And then, the obviously the elephant in the room is the running game, particularly the interior running game. I just think we're too predictable. And if you watch it and you break the stuff down, they are keen on our guys. And every time the people, the linebackers and the safeties are just running with reckless abandon towards the line of scrimmage on those plays. And we've got to punish them for doing that. And when we stopped being predictable, we started putting up points. We can score points in bunches. But until we've got some schematic problems on our running game, and we've got to fix that, because I'm telling you, it's not that all of a sudden our offensive line sucks, or all of a sudden Trey Henderson and Mayan Williams suck. It's that our scheme sucks, and that's been the one constant. We've fired coaches, we've changed players, we've changed running backs, but our scheme right now, we are too predictable in terms of where we're running. We're pointing the running game right to where it's going, and that's creating problems. And it was all really good that we were able to stand up before the season. And they're going to know where we're running, and we'll run it to them, and we'll still get it. No, that's not the way it works. It didn't work today. It didn't work last week against Iowa, and it definitely won't work against Michigan or whoever we see down the road. So we got to get that fixed. But hey, we got to win. We got to win at Penn State. I think back on the 2002 season, how many close games we had that year. We ended up being the national champion. Or the 2014 season, how many close games we had. Just win, survive, have a chip and a chair in the playoff, and you got a chance. And we accomplished that goal. Everything we want is still in front of us. So I'm very, very, very happy.
Yeah, Bucks didn't cover either today. The 13-point, most of the lines were at 15 when it went off. So we did not cover. We've been covering a lot this year. But I think that you're right about the numbers edge. I think that we're running into some really bad looks. I think part of it is because we are running more condensed box looks where we're running, Mitch Rossi and Cade. It's not their fault, but, when you're on that tight end wing, it really condenses the looks. More bodies in the box to match up with the 2 extra guys. We're not as spread out as we normally have been. So, and it's hard. And again, I know CJ's never going to run the ball. We're never going to have him read anything, but that really makes it a lot easier to defend. But, hey, we scored 44 today, and we're still going to be in the top, 2 or 3 in offense. So, this is something that as we, head down the stretch and we see Michigan, and then we potentially see Georgia and Bama in the playoffs, it's something you need to look for, because we're starting to play teams that actually have close to our level of talent. I think that if we're a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 in talent, Penn State's probably a 7. Iowa was probably a 6 or a 5. And the other teams that we played were about 5s, 4s. Notre Dame's probably a 5 or a 6. Wisconsin's just awful this year. But once we start seeing, Michigan and Georgia and those teams, they're going to actually have equal talent. So you have to get the scheme tightened up. You have to not run into some of these loaded fronts, because, it's just hard. You're going to be a guy short every time. And sometimes you're just banking on Trey Henderson running a guy over, or mine running a guy over, and trying to get that, that dirty 4 or 5 yards, get that, gut out some pars, it's like Kevin Wilson talked about, gutting out some pars and, some scrappy football, which is fine. But, you'd like to give yourselves as many advantages as possible. Let's talk a little bit about Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr. is skyrocketing up the all-time Ohio State rankings. He might be the best receiver in school history by the time he leaves. Still has another full year left before he will go pro after 3 years. So with the superlatives, Nevada, how good is Marvin Harrison Jr. and would you take him to start for your Packers tomorrow?
Yeah, I would take him to start the back for sure. Now, he's so good, and obviously we all watched that play, that 3rd down and 10, with about 4.5 minutes to go, where we just desperately need a conversion, and they go to him, and he, again, it wasn't a tough catch, it was a great throw, right there on the money, but just that kind of summed up the whole game for me. Just the brilliance of JT on the defensive side, and the brilliance of Marvin Harrison on the offensive side. It was really something to watch. And, we keep saying this guy's the best wide receiver ever, and every year maybe it seems like it's a different guy. But Marvin Harrison's awfully, awfully good, and he can do it all. And he's finally 100% healthy. He'd been hopping a little bit, through the beginning part of the season, and now he's a lot more fluid. You can see it, how he's moving out there, and he's getting. People were talking about him not being able to get away from press coverage. Well, he was away from it today, and I didn't understand why Ohio State. Every time Ohio State threw to the middle of the field, it was wide open, and we kept trying to throw those, whatever you want to call. What do you call those plays where you throw it out to the wide receiver screens?
What, our little bubble things that we do, or our little,
the little bubble to nowhere plays? Like,
what?
We must have run that 10 times today, and I'm telling you, it didn't work once.
Yeah, we run some where it's like a straight bubble where the receivers there. Then we run a lot more where they do the 3-man formation. It kind of looks like a toss sweep sometimes. The one where Cade missed the block early, it looks like an elongated like pitch, like a toss sweep, and you got your 2 blockers. You usually have Cade's usually the point guy, and then you have the second receiver is like the cleanup guy, and then you have Emeka usually catching it. And yeah, you're right; those are very ineffective. The one that Cade missed, it's a hard block because you just don't know how quickly the ball's coming to Emeka, but you don't know how quickly it's going to get there, so you don't know where Emeka's going to be at. So when you're trying to block a guy in space who's a decent athlete, and you don't know if Emeka's going to go left or right or where, so it's hard. Like, Cade tries to take him right down the middle. And, people on TV that are sitting there eating nachos, like myself, are like, oh, man, if he would have just kept going and hooked the guy, then that would have been a 70-yard touchdown. But it's hard because, when you're taking a guy down the middle, Emeka could take it either way. He could put his foot in the ground and go inside, or he could go outside based on what, the rest of the field looks like. So Cade's trying to block a guy in space, in motion, and, when he thinks Emeka's probably going to go outside and Emeka goes inside, the guy falls in and makes the play, and it just doesn't look right. But yeah, that is I think the reason we're calling those is because they feel so good about Cade in space, and he's got soft hands. He's a great blocker, but it really puts him in a terrible position, and it kept showing itself over and over again. And I think that we'll probably see less and less of that. The next few weeks. I mean, it's going to be the crumble cookie cupcake factory. So we've got Northwestern, who's just absolutely terrible. Then we have Indiana at home. Then we have at Maryland, and then obviously we have the Big Blues. So we'll be able to basically run anything the next 3 weeks before we get ready for Michigan. But I think we got to get a lot of this tightened up. I think the running game is something that needs to be more proficient. Obviously, if you subtract, and I hate when people do this, so please don't think this is something I always like to do. But when you subtract Trey's 41-yard run, which again, that run still counts. People always say, oh, well, that's not run efficiency. Then we're at 25 carries for 57 yards, which is 2-ish and change a carry. And, this is against a good Penn State team, but a lot of people thought that their defensive line was way down from where they've been. I've seen really good Penn State lines that have first rounders at defensive end and tackle, and this wasn't that. But, it's worrisome because we're going to start seeing some better fronts when we see Michigan. And then, again, if we see Bama and Georgia, I mean, we're going to see some real fronts. And, you got to get that tuned up. And again, I think you're spot on, Nevada, when you're critical of the scheme. I think the scheme needs to be spruced up a little bit. And I don't know if it's running an RP off it. I know they're not going to read anything. The reason the read option is always so effective is because it equates numbers and it makes it easier to match the number of offensive guys in the box, the number of defensive guys in the box. It helps you match up whereas if you never read anything, you're always a guy short. So, there's always going to be a free guy coming to to whack, your running back in the hole. And there's no other way to describe it with the way that we formation these guys. So defensively, good.
Well, hold on. One point that you made earlier on those condensed boxes that were running with those two tight end looks. I mean, you remember that big run by Trey? That was just a single tight end, and Cade made just an unbelievable block.
Yeah.
Got the primary and then got the secondary. But you're exactly right. When you're running two guys and when you're running two tight ends, you're just bringing more guys into the box, and it's so hard for everybody to account for everything like that. And so I think, we've got to start running out of more spread looks so that you give a chance for Trey to kind of do his thing. And you saw he got a little hole. He was able to take it all the way to the house, but there's just been too few of those lanes for him to run in, and that's got to get fixed.
Yeah, and I learned a lot of offensive football. I mean, obviously, I played in the Jim Tressel era where we ran two tight ends and a fullback and, run it up the gut, running power, pulling the guard, double team, like try to get 3-4 yards. I mean, it was a physical offense, but it was not hard to defend. I mean, my 5-year-old could draw up a defense to defend that. It's basically just put 8 guys in the box and go hit the guys and just keep running it over and over again and hope you wear them down. But when I worked for Tom Herman, who the last I checked, he's the guy that won us the national championship in 2014 with Ezekiel and that fantastic running game down the stretch. He hated what he used to call football in a phone booth, where you have these, he never ran two tight ends, ever. It was one tight end, usually 3 receivers most of the time. And, you just get better looks, and Tom, the reason Urban hired him is because he was really big on running the quarterback to the point where, Braxton, hated it, because frankly, he was getting hit a lot. But it's like, when you're the coordinator and you're just trying to win games, you're not worried about longevity and hits and that type of thing. You're just trying to win every single game. And I'm telling you, like when you run with that spread out look, and you got a quarterback that can at least be somewhat of a threat. Now, I'm not saying you need to, he doesn't need to be Tommy Frazier, he doesn't need to be JT Barrett, but it holds the defensive end for a second, so it gives a guy like Trey Henderson a couple more feet of space where he can cut it back and go up the alley and score a 40-yard touchdown. Now, I know you don't need that against Northwestern and in Antarctica State and some of these teams that we played early in the year, but like, you get to Georgia and Bama and some of the big dogs, like you need every advantage you can get. And it's not just, hey, let's line up and see how tough we are versus real players, versus 5-star guys that we wanted. Because, Penn State's a good team, but in reality, on their entire roster, if they have 85 scholarships, they might have 20 guys that we might have offered, maybe. Georgia has 85 guys that we offered. So that's a big difference. Iowa had maybe one guy, that safety that we had, Xavier Nwapka or whatever his name was. That guy is the guy that we legitimately offered. But most of these teams that we've played so far, they might have 1 or 2 guys that we offered. So, we get into Georgia, Bama, even Michigan has a couple. But, when you get into the playoffs, you're going to be seeing a lot of guys that are as talented as the guys we got. And, so you better have a good schematic advantage when you're playing equal talent. A guy that I want to bring up to you, Nevada, a guy who has been a Nugget mainstay over the last 2 years, is a guy who had his stat line today: 5 tackles, 1 sack, 1 TFL, huge tackle for a loss on a 4th down run. Tyleik Williams showed up today, Nevada. What were your thoughts on Tyleik?
Well, Tyleik, we've talked about Tyleik now for a couple of years. Tyleik had some conditioning issues where he couldn't sustain the effort, more than 1 or 2 plays, or more than 2 or 3 plays. And they've been really pushing on him to be able to get in better cardiovascular shape so he can give it, because when he's out there, he is super impactful. And I thought today he played as long and as hard as I've ever seen him play. And like you said, he was a difference maker. He was a difference maker, practically the whole game. And if he can get his conditioning under control, he can be a high-impact guy. I mean, he can be a Michael Hall type of guy for us on the interior line. And we need guys like that, because we don't have many guys like that are that big, that are that quick, that can make those types of plays. He's just got to be able to do it for longer and do it for more plays. But he did it today, came up big, and couldn't have been happier for a kid.
Yeah, he's the guy that I think as the season goes on, the arrow's pointing up. He's the guy that we need. You can't have enough productive defensive tackles, guys that are forces in the middle. He is just that. And again, those are the guys I don't want to go against, frankly, because he's a twitched up guy. The guys I've talked to in the Woody Hayes say that, he has feet. And not every... The thing about like NFL guys, you see these big guys that weigh 340 pounds, and you're like, well, how can he do anything? How can he move? Well, that's because God gives some of these guys a thing called twitch. Not every 340-pound guy has twitch. A lot of guys, they're slow. They look like they can barely walk on the street. But you put Tyreek in a three-point stance, and he comes off the rock, and he has legit shock on the guards. And he is a monster. And I think that hopefully today is the day that sparks his career, because he has first-round ability. He has to put together. He has to stop being immature and being stupid and tweeting stuff and saying, I wish I could play and free Tyreek. Like, don't do that. Just work harder, because the kid has so much talent and he's such a good kid. And I'm like, dude, don't ever put anything about your playing time on Twitter. That I'm telling you from inside the coach's room, they hate that and they remember that. And the next time you screw up in practice, you're going to say, man, if you spent more time in the weight room or on the treadmill and less time on Twitter, you'd be balling. But the kid showed up in a huge way today. That fourth down stop was the play of the game. You know, they ran that stupid T formation, which again, you know, these coaches make $9 million a year, and that's what they should come up with. I literally thought they were going to try and draw off sides and try to get the first down, but they didn't, and they ran that, and Tyreek stuffed it, and kudos to him. What a play by him. Another guy, and this is one of our favorites. I've known his brother Liam for a long time. Cleveland St. Ignatius, went to Notre Dame, should have been a Buckeye, starts for the Miami Dolphins now. Tommy Eichenberg, 15 total tackles and a quarterback hurry. Nevada, your thoughts on Tommy today? Again, if he's not an All-American, they should cancel All-American teams at the end of the year, because he has been as productive of a player as there is in the entire country on defense.
Well, and as gaudy as the stats were, he could have, you know, he was unlucky. He had a hand on one pass there that they could have intercepted very easily. And on that fourth down play on the touchdown from the 1 foot line, he was in the backfield in a position to make the tackle and just got shrugged off, and that was kind of bad luck for him. So as good a game as he played, he almost was in the outstanding category. But no, he's just been great. It's funny about the defense. Like the defense today, so how many points did we give up today? 31?
Yeah.
31. We give up 31 points. But I can't put my finger on it, but I still don't feel like the defense played bad. This is not the same type of 31 as giving them up last year. And I just I feel like the difference that Knowles has made with the defense has just been absolutely jaw-dropping. And, you know, this game, you play this game with the same talent, the same kids, the same situation, everything. The only difference is no Jim Knowles and Kerry Collins in the defense. We lose today. We lose today. And we probably lose going away. And that's how valuable he is. That's what a difference maker he is. And I'm telling you, it's gonna manifest itself, and we're gonna land some big defensive recruits because people are starting to take notice. The OSU defense did not have a great reputation the last couple of seasons, but it's coming back. And today was a huge step forward, just a big win all the way around. And you know, even though we gave up 31 points, still very pleased. I give the defense as high a grade as you can give any defense that gives up 31 points, because we got the win. And they came up big when we needed them to.
Yeah, it was funny. I texted Big Dave JT's stat line today, and he just sent back a big smiley face emoji. So we need Mateo, baby. We got to keep getting these monsters in here from the West Coast. I really love the energy of the defense. You know, I think the biggest reason you can say that the defense, you didn't feel like the defense played bad, is because, I mean, 3 interceptions by our defensive ends, which I don't know if I'll live to see the next time that happens in the history of Ohio State. I don't think we've ever had 3 defensive end picks and 1 for a touchdown. So, you know, again, these guys are energized. You know, I think Tyreek's coming. I think, you know, JT, I mean, this is the kind of game that could catapult him to being an All-American this year, just because, you know, everyone in the universe is watching that game. This was a game. It was a tight game. And when the chips are down and things matter, JT Tuimoloau made the plays that, you know, basically slit the throat of Penn State. I mean, those guys they had hope, and then all of a sudden he gets that pick, man, and it is a wrap. And it's sometimes like there's no better feeling in life, and I mean this from experience, because, you know, I've won up at the Big House, won out at Penn State. I mean, this was probably the biggest margin of victory since we beat Penn State my senior year. We waxed them in a whiteout. It was like 38 to, I think, 10 or 14 or something like that. But it was a big margin. It was a good win. But when you take the air out of the balloon in a nasty, terrible stadium like that. It was funny when Mayan got hurt, he took that walk down to the locker room. In that locker room, you have to walk kind of through the concourse where the fans are, and they set up these barricades like in the old WWF. And I mean, the people are just nasty, vile, filthy, and it was worse at the night out because everyone was drunk, and so they're saying the nastiest things. I had to take that walk when I tore my knee up in '05. I had to take that walk with our doctor and our trainer so they could evaluate my knee, and I knew my knee was done because I couldn't put any pressure on it. But it's kind of fun because you like when they really hate you. Like that's something that, when you're a true football fan, and Ryan Day, like those guys walk into that locker room after silencing Happy Valley and the whiteout and 107,000, and they all get to go home sad. Like that is an amazing feeling. And that bus ride to the plane and that plane ride home, and these kids are actually getting home at 5 so they can actually go out and have a couple beers tonight and kick it and holler at some girls. It is going to be a good night for the Bucks. I'm happy about that. CJ Stroud, we touched on CJ a little bit in Nevada. It's funny when you can say that he was kind of up and down, and you look at his stats. He's 26 for 33, 354 and a touchdown. A lot of people are going to be like, well, who would ever complain about that stat line? But I thought some of the game management stuff, I thought some of the delayed game stuff, which again, the environment is difficult, but you're going to play in hard environments the rest of the season and in the NFL. What were your thoughts on CJ today?
Again, yeah, it was mixed. It was a mixed bag. I mean, it was 90% of it was outstanding, and then there's that 10% that's just kind of makes you scratch your head. And, you just realize that he's still young. He's still not a finished product. And, and I'm going to say something that probably some people will not agree with, but I as it stands right now, if I was CJ, and he won't do this, but he should come back for another year because he's not ready. Because I think every game in the NFL is going to be like this. And I think he's terrific, and I think he makes big throws, but then he'll make some mental mistakes out there on the field that you just cannot make as an NFL quarterback. And I'd like to see him get another year under Ryan Day. Now, maybe that's wishful thinking. I'm sure that is wishful thinking, but, hot take. I think C.J. Stroud should come back for one more year at Ohio State, and that's probably my homer glasses talking, but I'm going to stand by that take.
Well, the interesting thing about that is there used to be a time like with Matt Leinart and Eli Manning, where these guys, they went back for that extra year to develop. David Cutcliffe and Eli Manning at Ole Miss, like he stayed for his 4th year. Peyton stayed for his 4th year, which it's unconscionable today for a star quarterback to stay for 4 years, which again, I think that's kind of the new wave of kid, where these kids, they want to be they want to say they were 3 and out. They want to say they went straight to the league, as early as possible. It's kind of like an achievement that these kids hold. But my biggest thing with CJ is, the thing that has saved Justin Fields is his athleticism and his legs. Like you look at him against New England, I mean, he ran for 85 yards, touchdown. He's playing behind maybe the worst offensive line in all of the NFL. And that saved it. Now, CJ is not anywhere near the athlete that Justin is. He's a better thrower, but CJ is going to go to the Carolina Panthers, the Houston Texans, or the Indianapolis Colts. Like one of these teams that are just completely awful, where these quarterbacks are getting absolutely killed. You look at Carolina, Baker Mayfield's been knocked out already. They're down to PJ Walker at quarterback, and Matt Ryan absorbed however many sacks before he got benched this week for Etlinger. But that's going to be his reality. He's going to go somewhere where he's not going to have DeJuan and Paris, and he's not going to be playing against, Penn State and, these college teams. You're going to be playing against NFL pass rushers, and you're not going to be behind a good offensive line. So it's tough. And I think, a lot of these quarterbacks, if they potentially become busts, it's because it's not really through. I mean, I don't want to say it's, Jamarcus Russell's a guy that never said anything, but like some of these guys, the situations they go to are so bad, and they get physically so beat up in these games that they don't really have a chance. Like David Carr went to the Houston Texans and he got sacked 76 times this rookie year. Like you have no chance. Like your body won't even work after 2 years of that. And by the time you're a free agent, you're an afterthought. You're a backup. Your body's so beat up that you can't even throw a ball. So it's going to be interesting. Obviously, we know CJ is going to jump after this year. But it really comes down to what team you go to and what kind of offensive line they have, what kind of pass rushers do they have to go against in their division. There's a lot of, and the biggest thing is what kind of weapons do you have? Because right now he's got the best receiver in the entire country. The guy that I think is the best tight end in the country. Emeka's probably a top 5 or 6 receiver in the country, and you have Trey, who's a top 3 or 4 running back in the country. So I mean, Trey showed up. He had that big run today. He's been dinged up, and he's starting to get back into form a little bit after missing a game with injury. But it's going to be interesting to see how these guys progress as we march towards Michigan, because the big thing now is you got to manage the expectations, you got to manage the focus. People are going to be talking about, hey, that Michigan game, because I lived this in 06 when we got over the hump against Penn State in the middle of the season, and then it was just Cupcake Alley, man. It was like nothing but Indiana's and Illinois and just the Northwestern, like the turds of the Big Ten. And at the end of the schedule, once Michigan had beaten Notre Dame early in the season, they'd won out at Penn State. Nobody was going to touch them, and we knew nobody was going to touch us, and we knew it was going to be a march to that 1-2 game, and that's what these guys are going to deal with for the next month or so. Nevada, do you have any concerns? I mean, obviously, you look at the schedule. I don't know how you could have any concerns, but any concerns about the team's mentality or morale going forward?
No, again, I think that this was an emotional win. So for Ohio State, if you believe in the theory that there are letdowns, that you got to expect Ohio State to let down next week. This was a big buildup for them. This was a big effort for them. This was a big emotional game. As you said, they're going to be whooping it up in the locker room and on the trip back home. So maybe next week, maybe they come out a little flat. Maybe they come out and have to try to keep things under control. But no, I mean, there's nothing that's scary like, hey, we could lose before the Michigan game. But I'll look for maybe some uneven efforts between now and then, building up for that Titanic showdown with Michigan, which again, I'm still supremely confident in our ability to handle it. I think I've been saying it all year. I don't think the game's going to be as close as people think. I've had this Ohio State team pretty well pegged all season long. I called Ohio State to win by 10 today, so I didn't have them covering the spread. I feel like I've got a pretty good handle on this game. I'm telling you, the Michigan game is not going to be as close as people think. Ohio State's going to beat them, and they're going to beat them pretty good.
Yeah, so we're going to take some questions out. Here, let me get this format a little bit better. But this was a big thing. I'm going to go with K. Simon here. Run blocking. We're getting hit behind the line of scrimmage on an abnormally high amount of runs. Coach Nevada Buck. We were talking about this in the pre-show. Your thoughts on our scheme right now? Because I'm seeing our guys. It's hard when you see these guys get hit behind the line as they get the ball handed to them, because it's not what are they supposed to do. But what is your solution to fixing that?
Spread them out. Get start equating the numbers. Spread them out so that you're not running into these mass fronts. Quit being as so predictable. You're pointing to where you're running on these plays, and they're just. I think that for Ohio State, they've got to do more with pulling guards. Like you saw the one play where they pulled. I think they pulled Matt Jones late on one, and Trey got around the left end on that play around the goal line, and that worked really well. I think they've got to start using some more of that, because teams are teeing off. They know where we're going. They're overwhelming us with the numbers, and again, it's we can yell at the guys for not being aggressive or not being good firing out of 3-point stances, or we can yell at the old offensive line coach or the new offensive line coach or the running backs. But when you have guys getting hit in the backfield as often as it happens, that's a scheme problem. That is 100% a scheme problem, and that falls squarely on Ryan Day's shoulders, and he's got to fix that.
Yeah, and I've lived that life where the line stinks, you stink. Again, when you're an offensive lineman, you're just built to handle criticism, because that's just kind of part of the gig. But for me, when there's sometimes when you're literally in your stance or you see a play and mathematically you don't have a chance. Like, there's no play the play's going to work. They're in a run blitz. They're loading the box. They're not respecting the receivers. I thought Iowa's scheme last week was incredible, because they literally dared Ohio State to throw the ball, which again, it sounds insane because Ohio State's got the best receiver, maybe the best quarterback, and then in Mecca, you have all these weapons at receiver, and they played cover 0 and cover 1, which is like, generally you'd think that's suicide with Iowa's corners. They don't have Joey Porter Jr. and Penn State's 2 real good corners. They had, just average corners, but they said, hey, screw it. We're going to make them throw it to beat us, which again, with CJ and Marvin, that sounds crazy and it ended up being crazy. We ended up, pulling away from them late, but I thought it was a brilliant scheme because, sometimes you're like, why would you ever do that against Ohio State? Dare them to throw the ball when they're so good at throwing the ball. But, they were able to hang in there and their front played well. And I think that Iowa thought they could get after our offensive line a little bit because our offensive line hadn't seen anybody all year. They hadn't seen like a real opponent. So, it was interesting. This is a great one, Jay. I'm going to throw this one on the board. What is Nevada? Was this Stroud's Heisman moment? Is there a time for a Heisman moment before the Michigan game? Was today? I mean, I don't know if I felt it today, but was there a moment today that you thought might have been? I mean, I thought Marvin Harrison had a couple Heisman moments, and JT might have. But what about Stroud for you today?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I just think his overall body of work is just kind of overwhelming. His numbers and his numbers for the number 2 team in the country, just put him right out there in the discussion. I mean, if you're talking about Heisman moments, you're talking about JT Tuimoloau throwing the right guard into the quarterback, knocking him down, getting the sack, and then recovering the fumble, and then following that up with an interception. I mean, those 2 plays those are Heisman type of moments there. I thought CJ had a lot of really, really nice throws, and I hate to use the word moxie, but showed some toughness, showed some moxie, and but no, I just think he's there because just the overwhelming, the numbers. I mean, the numbers for him are just staggering right now, and you look at his stat line for somebody who didn't watch the game as closely as we did, and they'll look at it and just say, "Wow, this was just a virtuoso performance," and it was very, very good. And he's rightfully going to be there in the end. And frankly, if you had to look at who should win the Heisman right now, he should win the Heisman. I mean, who's got a better argument to win the Heisman Trophy right now than C.J. Stroud? Nobody.
Yeah.
So like you can only play in the season you're playing. You can only play in the teams you're playing on. So he's right now should win the Heisman, and I think he will win the Heisman.
If the season stopped today, which Ohio State Buckeyes would be first team All-Americans?
Well, I think, Tommy Eichenberg, if it stopped today and the voting was today, I mean, it's probably Tommy Eichenberg, Paris Johnson, and Marvin Harrison.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. I think, the thing that'll be interesting is, will JT continue this momentum? Because, when you have a game like that, a lot of these, it's kind of like Pro Bowl balloting. Like when I was in the NFL and we voted for the Pro Bowl at the end of every season, for the defensive linemen and linebackers, for the D linemen, they literally put up, here's the league leaders in sacks. They put it on the overhead projector. Then for linebackers, here's the league leader in tackles. Then for DBs, here's the league leader in interceptions. So, like, I kind of feel like, a game like this, people are going to remember the name JT Tuimoloau. They might take a glance at his stats. But, when you play like that in a game that the entire nation is watching, and plus you're a 5-star kid, you're number 1 recruit, people are going to assume that you dominate every game. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he snuck onto one of the teams. There's about 7 or 8 teams that Ohio State recognizes as All-Americans where you get a tree. A super, 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 super dark horse for me would be Lathan Ransom. 7 tackles today. He's taken over that spot from Josh Proctor. Josh Proctor has been benched. He's been relegated to being a special teamer. Mostly had 2 tackles today, covering kickoffs. But he is a super, super sleeper. Mike Hall started off hot. Today he just had 1 tackle, not as much production. But yeah, it's exciting to be talking about defensive guys as All-Americans after the last 2 years where we kind of got walked up and down the field by average teams, let alone really good teams. And it's exciting. And a guy that I would love, and I don't know if he'll make it over Mayer at Notre Dame, who's been hurt, or the kid from Iowa who is a target monster. But I think Cade is really playing well, productive. 6 catches, 78 yards, a touchdown. I don't know if Jeremy Ruckert had the stats that Cade did, but Cade's turned into a real weapon on this offense, and he's up to 24 catches on the year. So I mean, he's slowly kind of working his way up into up the ranks of or excuse me, he's got 18, but he's only 12 away from setting the record. I think the record is like around 30 or 33 for the year. So I mean, if he keeps doing what he's doing, he's got a real shot at breaking that. Especially as we have these garbage teams coming up where we'll be able to really pad our stats. And that's the thing about Ryan. He's a lot like Urban. He loves to pad the stats. So Northwestern, look out. It is going to be bombs away against you guys, and Ryan's going to be throwing it deep he's going to try to get CJ probably 500 yards in the first half so he can get him out of the game and get Kyle McCord some actual throws, and get Devin Brown in the game and get some of these young guys in the game, because Northwestern is just absolutely terrible. They're having a really down year, and it's going to be interesting to see what we can do against those guys. Nevada, yeah, JJ, he is a semifinalist for, I believe, the Thorpe. So again, for a guy that had no preseason hype, it's something when these guys are contenders. Quick scoreboard check for you guys that I know you guys are probably watching on TV. Georgia's waxing Florida 21-0 already. Cal is up on Oregon, a little bit of a surprise. Kansas State is destroying Oklahoma State. K-State is 22nd in the country. Oklahoma State is 9th, 28-0. Nebraska is beating Illinois 9-6 in an absolute, that's a total Big Ten-ish type of score. And then we got the Big Blue tonight. The fun thing about these noon games is that the kids will be able to get out and go head out to the bars and have some fun and watch that Michigan State-Michigan game. I'm sure all you guys are going to be watching it as well. Nevada, give me a player on offense and a player on defense that you think needs to step up over the next 3 games before Michigan. A guy that I really would love to see more of, and I don't know if it's even possible because he just moved, Chip Trevanium, especially if Mayan is out for a substantial amount of time. He did not finish the game today. He had a knee procedure done. He, again, ice bag on the knee, which isn't great when you had a knee procedure done. Give me a couple guys you want to see step up in the next few weeks before we see the Big Blue.
Matt Jones, or any offensive guard, on offense. We just got to get that fixed, because that's a problem, almost singularly like a big problem for the offense right now. Defensively, just like to see Cam Brown come back from injury, or see Jordan Hancock go out there and do some things. Because I still think when we face a more than competent, you look at how many yards we gave up today to Penn State, and I know a lot. Some of those were in garbage time. I know some of those were kind of exceptional plays. The bottom line is Clifford threw for 350 yards or 300. I mean, some obscene amount of
371. Yeah,
371, and that's there's no way to spin that. That's not good. And so, and that was with a pass rush that was productive and getting in his face and making some good things happen. So we got to be better though. Those are 2 areas for improvement. But again, on a day like today, I'm just looking on all the positives, because I'm just so happy that we won. I remember the feeling in the fourth quarter when we're down in that game, and just thinking, could this really be the game that just everything went wrong, and we just didn't have enough time and ran out of real estate and wasn't able to pull it off. And I'm just so happy with the win that it's hard to look on anything negative right now.
Yeah, a quick Big Ten scoreboard check. Iowa is up 13-0 on Northwestern, who we see next week. Northwestern is absolutely terrible. They are 1-6. Look like they're on their way to 1-7. Minnesota's up on records 14-0. Let's move to Michigan versus Michigan State. Obviously, this has the makings of an absolute beatdown. Michigan is 7-0, 4th in the country. Michigan State is struggling at 3-4, 1-3 in the Big Ten. Nevada, what is your forecast for that? I can't believe the line is only 23. That seems very low, because I think Michigan could dog walk Michigan State tonight. Is in the Big House tonight at night. What are your thoughts on that game?
I think Michigan's going to kill them. I think Michigan's going to absolutely kill them. I think it's going to be like 49-7 or something like that. I didn't realize the line was that low. I may have to run out and get a little action on Big Blue there, because I think Michigan State's horrible, and playing that game. If the game was in East Lansing, they might have just like a chance of keeping it respectable. But the fact that the game's in Ann Arbor, no chance. And,
I might have to go.
They're gonna get killed.
I might have to go put my house on that one. Good God, I think that just. Michigan State, they looked so lifeless when we saw them, and that was in East Lansing, and they're gonna actually have to see these guys in Ann Arbor, and I mean, Michigan, they just look like a juggernaut. They look like old Michigan. They're running the ball well. Give me your thoughts. We got a month to go. Obviously, the whole world can change. With the as snake bit as we've been this year, injury wise, a lot can change before the Michigan game. What are your thoughts heading into that game? It's a month out. It's the game everyone's worried about. You said that we're going to beat them. I agree that we're going to beat them. But what concerns you as of today? If you're in Ryan Day's shoes and you're getting ready to get on the plane and fly home, what are you worried about coming down the stretch before we see the Michigan Wolverines?
Well, I just, if I'm Ryan Day, I'm telling myself that I have to be better. And then I have to, I have to be better in terms of getting the team into tempo. And we're clearly better when we're running tempo, when we're going fast. And I know that Ryan likes to micromanage the offense and like to have him look over to the sideline and get the call and get a second call and have him go to the line and snap the ball with 2 seconds. And, the CJ doesn't have the ability to audible. And I know that's the way he likes to play. We're better when we're playing fast. We create mismatches when we're playing fast. It creates problems for the defense when we're playing fast. And I think Ryan's got to let go. He's got to let go some of the reins off of the offense. Let them play fast. Let them use our advantage. Because I think that would be a really bad matchup for Michigan against an Ohio State team going fast, playing that way in front of that home crowd. I think that's just going to be that's a bad matchup for them all the way around on both sides of the ball. And like I said, if I'm Ryan Day, that's what I'm telling myself. I think he's met the enemy, and he is us. And Ryan's got to get that fixed.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's something that could shock the world that I think would be a fantastic move by Ryan is if he went tempo against Michigan. Michigan is, they've got a different DC from last year. That kid went back to the Ravens. I think that against Michigan, sometimes you can have something kind of in the back corner of the offensive staff room that you pull out and you use it. When we played Michigan in 2006, a 1 versus 2 game, we never showed being an empty spread team. And against those guys, because their defensive coordinator is a guy named Ron English. He ended up being the head coach at Eastern Michigan. He's coached about a million different places. He loved to disguise his blitzes. Loved to bring it from everywhere. Loved to show it coming from one way and bring it from the other way. And that was concerning. So our offensive staff, everyone likes to take dumps on Jim Tressel and Jim Bowman and all that, and they deserve some of it, but they don't deserve a lot of it. They decided, look, we're going to have Troy Smith win the game. We're going to go empty, and empty means 5 wide receivers for a long stretch of the game. That means that the 5-0 line guys have to stand up against Woodley, who was the best defensive end in the country that year, Alan Branch, who was projected when we played him as a top 5 pick in the draft. He ended up going in the second round. We got to hang in there, and they're going to bring 6 guys. So if you go empty, their check is to bring 6 blitzers against 5 blockers. So Troy has to get rid of the ball or he's going to die. And so, and Troy's a tough dude because you're going to, even when you get rid of the ball, you're still going to get smoked a bunch of times. So Troy did that. And lo and behold, they couldn't match up against Anthony Gonzalez and Ted Ginn and Brian Hartline and Rabisky and Roy Hall and all these great receivers we had. Those guys were able to win. So that was something we hadn't shown all year. We were running the I formation and some 3 wide receiver stuff, but we never showed just going straight empty. And we did it. And and we had some fantastic calls, but I think tempo, given how slow our offense is right now and how we love to do the look back and check and change the play, and then the defense changes the play, and then we try to change the play again, and it's just like it's lethargic. I know that we really try to get into the perfect play, which is great because obviously we're top number 1, if not top 2 or 3 in the country in offense, but we haven't really. This is the first real test that we've had in Penn State. Athletically, Iowa can't really hang with us in terms of our star power and our athleticism. Penn State's a little closer. I think Michigan will be a little closer. And again, I'm always looking towards Georgia and Bama and the teams are going to see the playoffs. But tempo is the great equalizer. And the thing about tempo is, you're going to have some plays that go for a loss of 1, or you're going to have some plays that don't work perfect. But then you're going to have a play where you gash them because they don't line up right, or they can't line up right, or you go so fast that they can't They can't switch the defense, or they can't look to the sideline, or whatever. And it's interesting. I feel like there's a little bit of a comeback from tempo. I know that a lot of teams stop using tempo because the umpire, who generally stands over the ball, was standing there for a really long time, so you couldn't go nearly as fast as you could in the early 2000s, say 2012, 2013, when we did that a lot with Urban and Tom Herman. But I think it's something that I would look for. And I'll tell you what, if a defense isn't ready for tempo, it is the absolute hardest thing in the world to go against. We did it against Penn State in 2012. I was on staff. We talked about doing it at halftime. We didn't do it before halftime because we didn't want to give Penn State the opportunity to adjust in the locker room to our tempo. Second half, we run tempo, and we destroyed them because their defensive linemen couldn't get off the field. They were exhausted. They had a really good defensive tackle. His name was 47. I think his name was Jordan Hill. He couldn't get off the field. Those guys used to run in 3 plays and then jogging off and drinking water and then coming back in after 3 plays. And by the end of the drives, he was standing straight up. He couldn't even pass rush because he was so exhausted. And they had no answer for it. And it won us the game, a tight game that was in a whiteout. It was as loud as Penn State's ever been. And that tempo won us the game. And I think that's something against Michigan that you have to consider doing. Because if you don't show it all year and then all of a sudden you spring it on them, that's the best way to do it. Jim Tressel did it against Arkansas in the Sugar Bowl. We put in a bunch of plays that were just literally one word. It was Oregon or Boston or Denver. And you say the word and it tells everybody what they do. The offensive line slide protects. This receiver is running a dig. This is running a slant, whatever, and easy, and we went fast, and Arkansas wasn't ready for it, and we were killing them in the first half. Now we almost gave that game away, but Nevada, I know you're a big tempo guy. What else? Is there anything else that you would adjust as we chart our course for this Michigan game?
The only thing that I would adjust is that I would have more charge on my phone because my phone is about to die after the pregame, the half-game show, and the post-game show. So I'm literally down to like 1% battery right now. So I'm going to have to. I would adjust my battery usage and charging thing, but I'm gonna let you bring this one home the rest of the way. And
well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much. This has been a blast. If you guys enjoyed this, consider joining BuckeyeScoop.com. We're about to jump on there. We're going to be on there all night talking about this Georgia game. We're going to have a game day going for that Michigan game. So if you enjoy getting the inside information and the inside scoop, consider joining BuckeyeScoop.com. It is a fantastic Christmas present for those of you guys that celebrate, holiday present for everyone else. It is a great gift. We love having you guys on here. Our community is expanding. It is very, very, it's a very healthy, fun community. We enjoy it. There's nothing I love more than being on the board, talking sports with you guys. So I hope you guys are doing great. Thank you guys all for tuning in. It means a ton to me. If you enjoyed this, please leave us a like, subscribe to the channel. We're growing this thing like crazy. We have an absolute blast with you guys. So thank you guys so much. Again, if you have any questions, please hit me up on Twitter. And if you want all of the content, all the interaction, all of the inside scoop of what goes on in the Woody Hayes at Ohio State University, join BuckeyeScoop.com. We appreciate you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Go Bucks. Beat Michigan.